Ooh, what a song. Brooke Benton there, Rainy Night in Georgia. Who, Georgia? What a song.
And we were just talking about Georgia.
We were just talking about Georgia. You see how I be getting on the desk? I got to make sure we playing the right songs, man. What a vibe. What a vibe to send us into the early hours of Wednesday. It's the 4th of November, past Election Day, Sama. I think the tension is kind of fading. Am I right in saying it's fading?
I think it's building.
It's building.
I think it's building.
Oh,
I think the calmest we've been was at 10 p.m. when
10
we
p.m.
started this show. I think as the night goes on, and obviously as we go into the morning where more votes come in, where different states will be counting all of their votes and the polls are closing, I feel like we're only getting more tense. I have slowly inched off my chair.
I've noticed.
I'm on the very edge of it. I'm literally on the edge of my chair now.
If you hear a sound, it's not a sound effect. It's Salma hitting the ground for falling off her chair. I'm telling you now.
As I just slowly slide off in my tension. Of course, there is so much tension because we are sitting on the very edge of history as America goes to the polls and as polls close and the counting begins for the next president of the United States. Will Donald Trump be able even to keep his tenure going and do a second term in office, or will Joe Biden disrupt everything and bring in the Democratic Party back to the White House? We are going to be talking to some more guests as we try to figure out. We'll be keeping the conversation going into the night. Let us know what your prediction is. 0800 731 2000. Do you think it's going to go red or it's going to go blue? Democratic or Republican? Biden or Trump? Let us know what your... And I know it's hard to call. Lion and I don't... We've been trying to call it off air because obviously we're
impartial.
We're impartial. We're not going to say it on air. But we've been trying to call it off air and we just cannot call it. Like, I have zero idea. To help try and figure this out, we've got Errol Morocco, who's member of Republican Overseas, on the line, and Sydney Enriquez Payne as well, talking to us about their predictions and what's going on. Errol Morocco, listen, you're Republican and the Republican Party has just declared, obviously, a potential win here that we've already got. It's the first state in Indiana to go red. It was expected. How are you feeling right now, Errol?
Oh, well, we're feeling tremendous. Not only Indiana, but Kentucky was just called, which is doubling down, especially because we have that important Senate race there with Lindsey Graham. So we're really buoyant. Everybody's excited. We saw the Dow surge 555 points today, which is an indicator of the market sort of seeing that Trump is gaining everywhere. We saw that in Florida, where I am, we had 157,000 vote lead going in from the early voters. Joe Biden was supposed to have that lead, but instead it's Donald Trump, and we're going to turn out on Election Day especially. Our voters will, walk across broken glass. So seeing some of these numbers, seeing some of the early numbers coming in, we did just lose Virginia, but that was to be expected. You got to keep in mind this is an electoral college, not a direct democracy mob rule. And in the electoral college, when we're looking at places like Pennsylvania and Michigan and North Carolina and Arizona being things that Trump has in his pocket, then with that Keystone State support, we're going to look at a landslide victory, and we're really excited to see that.
Well, you sound optimistic indeed, and it does sound like you are ready for a win and to keep President Trump in the White House for the next 4 years. I'm going to shoot over to Sydney, strategist and leadership coach. Sydney, what do you think your prediction is for the night, and what are you waiting for? What state are you waiting to come in?
Oh, I'm waiting for so many things. I'm waiting for each state, but my prediction is that ultimately Biden will win the popular vote, and there's going to be lots of legal proceedings and questions that are going to come up thinking about how we're going to certify and validate votes. As you may know, so many people have come out to the polls early. We've been so excited to see movements push voters out and really make sure that people are showing up and exercising their civic duty. And so many of the votes that may be coming in today, as they get counted, are only going to be complemented by those that have been sent in absentee.
Right.
So we're going to count those votes and wait for that win from the Biden team.
So Sydney, I'm curious now. There's a lot of people have been debating, why aren't people voting? Why aren't people voting? There's been a lot of rush going towards the ballot today and also throughout this whole election period. Has there been an event for you personally that's happened over the last 4 years that has cemented your view in terms of who you're voting for?
Oh, sure. I mean, I wake up every day as a Black and Afro-Latinx woman. So, for me, there's no question about who it is that I'm voting for in this particular election. Wanting someone who does not actively support white supremacists as my president is enough, let alone just like thinking about living in, last election for me, I was living in my little blue bubble. So many of the people that I was in conversation with were so sure that Hillary was going to take it home. And so wanting to make sure that, I was more active in this particular election and really enlisting and enrolling the support of those around me to make sure we were all going to be actively participating in this more so than before was of utmost importance.
Errol, I want to go to you off the back of something that Sydney said about making sure that I'm voting for someone who isn't a white supremacist or working with white supremacist organizations. And this is something that we spoke about earlier on in the show, is that so much of this election has been, categorized by conversations around race. Of course, we had the Black Lives Matter movement, the murder of George Floyd that happened in the middle of this election campaign. And like you said, you are incredibly positive that Donald Trump is going to secure a second term in the White House. And Donald Trump has spoken a lot about how the fact that he's not racist. In one of the debates, I think it was in the last presidential debate that we had, he said, "I am the least racist person in this room." That was his quote. Errol, what do you say to people like Sydney who do say, well, look, I'm voting for someone who isn't a white supremacist or working with white supremacist organizations?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, and I think she owes me an apology as well as the president. The president has never once condoned white supremacy. He's condoned David Duke. He's listed the KKK as a terrorist organization. The idea that he's going to jump like a dog when you say, fall into that Malthusian trap where you say, oh, denounce it. Why don't you denounce you're a pedophile? You can just denounce anything. It's a way of entrapment, and he refuses to kowtow to this sort of left-wing Orwellian double talk. I'm an immigrant to this country from Turkey, from a Muslim nation. I've never felt more welcome by any party in the world. So I strongly push back, and the idea that the person on the other side of this line would insinuate that the person who I'm defending is a white supremacist or works with white supremacists insinuates that I'm supporting that. And that's absurd. I'm an immigrant to this nation. Donald Trump does not support white supremacy whatsoever. He's instituted a platinum plan for black Americans, $500 billion of investment, 10 years of long-term investment in historically black colleges, which is generational wealth. We're seeing a split from the Democratic thought plantation where people are coming over and they're realizing, hey, this is a party that's about prosperity. When you have patriotism in your heart, there's no room for prejudice. So the idea that Donald Trump supports white supremacy, or that I would be on your station today doing that, I mean, I honestly feel that you owe me an apology. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Errol, we're gonna keep the conversation going because, again, this is a safe space. We want to make sure that everyone is entitled to their opinion and their view, apart from me and Sam, because we're impartial. But we're going to have this conversation and have it in a very, very healthy way. So, Sydney, I'm going to throw it to you, right? You definitely have heard Errol's concerns there, right, in terms of what you may be alluding to in regarding to his support of President Trump. What would you like to say in regards to that, seeing as he is offended regarding your remark?
Yeah, I'll take a step back and say, as someone who works largely in doing racial equity training and thinking really deeply about ways that we think through systemic racism, it's important for all of us to really understand that racism doesn't always look like overt racism. Microaggressions are real, systemic racism is real, embedded in policies and practices. These are things that are really worked into the fabric of, unfortunately, the history of the United States, starting with the genocide of indigenous peoples in this country and enslavement of Africans through chattel slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. So when we think about and acknowledge the history of this country and the way that it's been built, we must understand that the work that is being done, even something as simple as saying stand back and stand by to a white supremacist organization is dangerous and perpetuates the systemic racism that already exists in this country and is a part of its foundation. So as the work that I do day to day is really thinking about systemic transformation. It means movement building. And there's so many people that are doing amazing work to build coalitions and actually mobilize citizens to amplify the voices of the people that need the most. But we're working towards equity. So if we're thinking about equity, I want to have the conversation. So I don't think I owe you an apology. I think that I'm excited to be able to be in conversation with you to think about ways that we can dismantle systems of oppression that disenfranchise people like you who come from immigrant backgrounds and like me who have, I'm only 4 generations born free in this country. My family also comes from immigrants on my mother's side. So we have shared ground, and I think we should be able to build on that.
I think that's a really interesting comment. And I want to throw this back to you, Errol, actually. And if you're just joining in, welcome to The Late Show and this wonderful debate that we're having, this conversation between, I guess, Democrat and Republican, because that's where the fight is tonight, and what we'll find who is going to win in the next few hours as we watch the votes being counted. But Errol, I want to throw this back to you, and I don't want to get into a conversation about whether Trump is racist, right? Or whether the Republican Party supports that. I don't want to get into that back and forth between you and Sydney, because actually that conversation can go on for a really long time, and we can all quote different things that Trump has said positively for the black community, and we can quote things that he's said negatively for the black and the people of color community. We could do this all night like a tennis match. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go back and forth like that. What I do want to say to you, Errol, is there are obviously people across the United States of America, like Sydney, and other people like her. I've spoken to other people who hold similar views to Sydney, who do feel, whether it's legitimate or not, who do feel that the President of the United States of America has made comments previously that haven't been helpful towards people of color, towards immigrants, towards Muslims. And not just that he said things, but that some of his policy, for example, his policy banning immigration from Muslim countries when he first entered the White House, some of his policies and legislation have been harmful towards minority communities. Now, you might disagree with that, Errol. You might say, actually, he hasn't. He's done X, Y, and Z. And like I said, I don't want to get into this back and forth about what he has or has not done. There are people who have perceived the president to be against minority groups, and of course against the black community as well, and in favor of white supremacist groups. Now, Errol, what do you say in terms of what the Republican Party are going to do? What is Donald Trump going to do? What is the Republican Party's stance on how we actually unite America if he does get in and he does serve another term in office? Because isn't this about the United States, right? And isn't this about bringing people together? How is the Republican Party and Donald Trump going to bring together people who do feel like they've been wronged by the president?
I agree with everything you've said, and to look forward, we would have to continue the concept of America being a place for everybody to succeed. Prosperity is the great equalizer. We need to make sure that our investments that Donald Trump has talked about go through. We need to make sure that the black community sees that they have an ally in the new Republican Party, the party of Lincoln. Perhaps the Republican Party in past decades did not do the black community the service it should have, and the Democrat Party then was perhaps a better party for them. But as we see the information age sort of expanding viewpoints, it's sort of ridiculous to consider that one racial group would be so far onto one party. So I think we need to attract African American voters who are gaining education, who are gaining middle class status. There's a growing African American middle class that we're proud of. We see them as Americans. We want to make our party more inclusive. We want to reach out to the faith-based community, which is strongly African American as well. And I think that a moment of healing is required. President Trump is willing to reach out. He is willing to talk to people. He is willing to do things that a lot of presidents who are in the pocket of, let's say, lobbyists and whatnot aren't able to do. He was a registered Democrat until 2009. Remember that. This is the most liberal president elected in history in a lot of ways. The first president to recognize gay marriage as a law of the land upon election. So, there's a lot of progressive hope there, and I think we need to look towards the future as a party,
right,
and past Trump into the demographic change and bringing these new voters in. Keep in mind, if we get 15% of African American women to vote for the Republican Party, the Democrat Party will never win another election in their lifetime. And so that's what we need to look at.
Well, Errol, thank you for sharing that sentiment. What's really, really transparent to me in this dialogue that we're all having here on BBC Radio London, The Late Show, is that we have opposing views. We have opposing standards. We have opposing perspectives. And even echoing Salma's point, what I'm concerned with is, are we ever going to meet a middle ground anywhere, right? We're always at the point where people in the States have said to me, it's the choice between a lesser of two evils, right? Who are we going to decide, either this person or that person? Is there ever going to be room for a breeding ground of union, all right? As again, this is the United States of America, but I feel, and a lot of the people who are listening right now feel, that it is divided by different sides of who's going to be the next potential president of the United States. I'm going to throw this question to you, Sydney. Now, considering there was a quote that, who's the person? I think it was Ed Milet who was in reference to Malcolm X. And he said, that which you don't hate, you will eventually tolerate. Is there ever going to be any room where these opposing sides come together and share some sort of similarity in their views moving forward? Otherwise, isn't America going to continue to be divided moving forward?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and I'll start by saying there is no progressive hope on the Republican Party. And I think that that's really important to be able to call out, so much so that so many Republicans are denouncing their party and voting outside of their party in this particular election. And to answer your question directly, I think there has to be common ground. There has to be shared ground. And it's something that, I tried to share in my last conversation or response. There's common ground for all of us as humans and, in theory, as citizens of this country. And that's something that is important to centralize around. I'm looking for a president who's excited about working in service of all citizens of this country and making sure that they have what they need. That really means taking a survey and doing a landscape analysis of who doesn't have what they need, and then working to rectify those needs first, so that we have a level playing field. So much so that my Republican colleague on the line is talking about having an inclusive party. I'm here for inclusion. So that's a common ground. How can we really make this country a place that works for everyone?
And everyone being the key word there, absolutely. Sydney, we're looking at figures that are coming in now. Trump's taken Kentucky, Biden's taken Vermont. Obviously, just a few moments ago, Indiana as well, the home of the home state of Vice President Mike Pence, also went with the current President Trump. If we just look at this off the bat, it looks, that Trump there's more red on the map, basically, to put it bluntly, that Trump is at 13, Biden is at 3. A lot of people predicted that actually earlier on in the night, it would go towards Trump more than it would later on in the night. But there's always hope. Florida's looking sketchy right now. What would you say, Sydney, to Democrat voters who are currently, I imagine, also sitting on the edge of their seats?
Yeah, it's early still. And we are all mobilizing and doing the work if we showed up to vote today. And we also have work to do after the election. So I'm so excited that people are excited about voting, and everybody's posting and reposting their votes and their voting stickers. And the fight is not over after the ballot box. We have work to do in making sure that this system works in service of us. We talked a little bit earlier about, that middle ground. And I think it's really about making sure that we're not just becoming the mainstream. Mm-hmm. We're thinking about what do people need on the margins and designing around those folks. So that means that we've got more work to do, because we've been doing a lot of things that have been maintaining the status quo. Right. Even, working to vote Biden in leaves us with work to do fundamentally together, and the movement doesn't stop here.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Sydney. Listen, Errol, I didn't pose the question to you, but I'm going to pose the same question now. Do you feel like there's any room for breeding ground in terms of the potential similarities moving forward? Again, it's a very divisive campaign in terms of which side you're going to be voting for, who you're going to be standing by. Do you feel like the future has any sort of breeding ground space for you all, to whether that's Republic or Democrat, to move forward together?
Yeah, you mean after the vote? Do you think there's any
after the vote? Yeah, no, definitely. Because again, there are signs and people posting about worrying about a post-election violence. This is a concern for many people. So in terms of moving together as a union, a united force, do you feel like that could potentially happen?
Yeah, well, look, my background is in history. I have 2 history degrees, and when you look at how centuries work, you essentially start the century going into the 3rd decade, right? So you see the transformative change, 1820, 1920. We're entering 2020. This is where people who were born in this decade are coming of age. People of the last century and their viewpoints are finishing their point of authority. And so, this is a healthy redistribution. Keep in mind, for 244 years, this republic has peacefully transferred power. And that's one of the cornerstones of the republic. It's a country that's founded on an idea, not a ethno state, not any sort of geographical background, but an idea. And that's very rare. And so the American capacity for change as an immigrant, that's one of the things that makes me so proud to be here, because you can see even, small things. 10 years ago, you couldn't imagine that you'd have transgender bathrooms everywhere from Alabama to Napa Valley, and you do. And that's the capacity of Americans for change. These sort of steam valves that are built into our system, the idea that Donald Trump goes out there and breaks common courtesy, this is a steam valve in a republic for people to send somebody when they see that the representatives perhaps are not speaking to them. And if that goes the other way, the one thing I can say proudly is that we're not going to have violence. They're boarding up those stores not because right-wing agitators are going to go up and burn them down. So I think we have a lot of room for reconciliation regardless. This country needs it, and it's in our blood and DNA to bring our problems out, not let them fester. Keep in mind, the concert of Europe was destroyed by diplomats, not kings. So you need the people to talk. And right now, dialogue has never been more robust. We're split and divided now, but this country goes through these phases and cycles. And historically, I think this is a natural cycle, and it's healthy, and it's something that we're going to get through all together. And my colleague on the other side, I really hope that we can work together and find common ground and equality and equity for everyone.
Errol, you just mentioned there that we go through cycles and we go through different histories, and for sure it does seem to go like that. You said as well at the beginning of the call that you're really confident, the Republican Party is really confident for a sweeping victory, not even, a slight victory, like a sweeping victory for the Republican Party tonight, and to see Donald Trump back in office for the next 4 years. But obviously, like you said, history changes things a little bit, and we've got swing states in play that are incredible, that they're even a battleground state. For example, Arizona. What do you think is the worry then? Are the Republican Party worried that these states are even up for debate, or do you think Trump's going to just pretty much take them quite easily?
I think Trump's going to take them quite easily in this go-around, but that, again, speaks to the change in demographics. Again, the Republican Party has to be more open to Hispanic voters. These are usually families of faith that are immigrants into those states, and they need to incorporate them. You see the 30% increase in Hispanic vote that's going to Trump. So when you see those states in play, just like, you'd be shocked to think that Michigan or Wisconsin or Minnesota would have been in play, or Pennsylvania, but they were, and Trump took them. So, of course, everything's in play, and that speaks to demographic change, but that also speaks to the Republican Party that's going to have to take some more liberal stands on some things and reach out to voters that they traditionally were ignoring, and to their own detriment and to the detriment of the country, I should say.
Listen, you both have been an incredible guest on tonight's show. Just to round off right now, Sydney, I'm going to throw to you. Any final words or sentiments in terms of how you feel that the following a couple hours towards the potential week are going to be for people in the Democratic Party? How do you feel towards that?
Yeah, I think everyone, regardless of party affiliation right now, is on edge because we know that this is big and it's important. And so I'm excited that, we're able to unify around how important this republic is, this country is, and the fact that we all believe so deeply in the fact that we want something better than we have right now. I want us to all be motivated around the fact that there's work to do and that we all have the agency to be able to make positive change, whatever that means for us. As long as we're acknowledging our privilege, leveraging that privilege and sharing our power to be able to do good work, regardless of party affiliation, let's get out there, let's do the work, let's make it move.
Awesome. What a perfect sentiment to end on. Listen, thank you so much, Sydney and Errol, for joining us on tonight's show. We really look forward to having your voice and opinion again in the following days to really see what's going to be happening in the States. Until now, we're going to play one of my favorite songs. Here is Harry Styles' Watermelon Sugar.